All right, so over the last couple of days, you've been watching Miss Robinson or Miss Briggs, and they've been helping you with the sections from 2.1 to 2.4. Now, the next part that we're going to be working on is going to be a bunch of sections that are moving on down the deal here. So the next 3 videos that you're going to be watching, I'm going to be talking about all the different algebra proofs and that we're going to be talking about here. So this is the beginning of your homework page at the beginning of your notes, kind of outlines the things that you're going to be working over on the next few days. So make sure that you're taking a look at all those worksheets that are in your homework packet that are appropriate to this, and then we'll take each one on as we go. So it's going to be 2.5a, and I'm going to slowly but surely, I'm going to pause this and move to the 2.5a section that's in your notes. Okay, so over the past few days, you've been really focused on the idea about what a proof is about. And what we're really going to be moving into is we're going to be moving into some specific types of proofs that you're going to be exposed to. There's really 3 different types. There's going to be algebra proofs. Yay, because you've been doing algebra for a really long time. So this is a really good place to start. And then there's going to be some segment proofs that we're going to talk about. And then finally, we'll finish off the unit with doing some angle proofs. And by the time we're all done, we should be able to, and it says here, students will be able to form a proof using algebra. So there's your SWABAT about what kind of things you should be able to do. Now, one of the things that should have been explained in the last couple of units is that the idea of a proof is what its purpose is to explain the whys you do things. In algebra, this has really not been something that you're focused on. It's like your algebra teacher was like Gandhi, and he was telling you, yeah, this is the way you solve things in terms of algebra. But the real question is why were you doing such things? Now, the reason why you were doing any of the things that you were doing in algebra is because there are outlined specific properties that you should be aware of, you should have thought you should have been aware of, to do the certain kinds of things that you were doing in algebra. Say, for instance, you had x minus 3 was equal to 9, and ultimately you solved that particular kind of question by adding 3 to both sides and ended up getting an answer of x equals 12. Well, the process that took you from this step right here, which was the original, and the ability to add 3 on both sides and then end up getting that answer over there was the addition property of equality. So this right here, this little y concept would have been like the addition property is what allowed you to do that. Now, that's what we're going to be explaining you thoughts to do when it comes to your algebra proofs. We've got to come up with the whys. Well, same kind of ideas. If you have the addition property, you should also have in your repertoire the subtraction property. So you said x plus 5 was equal to 7. Well, if you subtract on each side, that would be the subtraction property that's taking place. Okay, you just never really called it that in algebra. Now you have to explain why you're doing it. Multiplication property dealt with undoing things that were on division, like x divided by 3. And I multiplied each, x divided by 3 is equal to 10. So I multiply by 3 on each side. That would be the multiplication property of equality that's going on. Then we would have things that got rid of multiplication. Like, say, for instance, we had 5x was equal to 15. And we divided by 5 on each side. That'd be the division property of equality. Okay? Now, you'll probably notice that I like to simplify these and make them, simpler. I don't want to write division property of equality every time. Division property, so you get the idea. If I had something that was in algebra that was based on 3 times x minus 3, and what would that turn out to be? Well, that'd be 3x minus 9. And that's because I'm pushing this 3 through there, and that would be the distributive property that's taking place. So we've seen all these types of properties that are going on. We just need to now explain them. And these are the whys. You're talking about why are you doing something? This is the property that's telling me that I can do that kind of why. It's almost like you're trying to explain to a 5-year-old. He'll be like, why'd you put 3 on both sides, G? You'll be like, because of the multiplication property said that that's the way I should get rid of that division. Okay, so we're really thinking about the whys and explaining those whys. Now, when we talk about proof basics, there's going to be some piece of information that you're going to end up be giving. So like say it's 3 times x minus 2 is equal to 7, something like that. Oh, I don't want to do 7. I'm going to make it 9. So it's a little bit easier for me. Okay, and this right here, this original problem that you've been given, so the problem that starts with is going to be your given. And it ultimately turns out that the given has to show up at the very beginning of the proof. You begin your proof with this. Okay, now if I can teach you anything, the one thing you're going to actually have to teach you is that when you get the problem or whatever given amounts, they go at the beginning of the proof. And if you can't do that, then I can't train you to do anything. You're basically a monkey and you should go back up in the tree. Okay? Now, the proof part that we're going to try and do is that somewhere along the way, we're going to do a bunch of solving that's in between right here. There's a body of the actual proof that you have to work on. And then in the final result, you would end up getting the answer, which in this case is going to be x equals, I'm doing a little math in my head right here, it would be 5. Now that would be the last line of our proof. Okay? And we've got a whole bunch of stuff in between. It's almost like writing a story in English. You would definitely have a thesis that you would start with. Then there would be a body to the actual sentence or to the paragraph. And then there would be a conclusion to the deal. Proofs are no different than that. They have a starting point, the given, the body, which is how you're going to go through the steps to get to an end result, and the conclusion in the end is what you're trying to prove. Now, the reason why we choose to do algebra proofs to start out with is because this tends to be an area that you guys are familiar with. So the first thing out of the gate we're going to talk about is number 1. What should I put on the very first line of any proof that I'm talking about? And it could contain like the first few lines, but it's in general the first thing that needs to be written down is the problem itself or the given amount. Now this is like, I should say, it's a given concept. You should do this because when you do your proofs, if you don't write down the given, I can't help you in any way, shape, or form. Now, what would you do to each side of this based on some algebra that would make sense? Now, most of you are going to probably look at this and be like, well, gee, I would minus 5 on both sides, and I would write the resulting answer on the next line. Now, the resulting answer on the next line would be that 10y is equal to 20. Okay? Now, here's the question. When you're thinking about doing proofs, it's like, how did I get from this line to this line? And what I did to get there has to be explained in this location. So what did I actually do to go from line 1 to line 2? Well, I subtracted. I did a subtraction deal, and I did the subtraction of 5 on each side, which was based on the subtraction property. Those properties are your y's. Over here is where we're going to put our reasons, and on this side is where we're going to put our statements. Okay? Statements are what we're trying to get done, and reasons are why did I do whatever I did. Now, if we take a look at each individual line, you'd be like, okay, well, what's the next following step to continue this? Well, I would divide each side by 10, and my end result would be that y equals 2. Now, check it out. It's exactly what you were trying to prove. But what was the step that needed to take place from this point to this point, and tell me why you did it? So to go from line 2 to line 3, I used the division property. Now, what you're basically putting in place here is you're putting in not only the algebra that you learned back in algebra, but now you're explaining why you're doing each individual step from step to step to step. And it's basically you're writing a paragraph or a thought that has a beginning, a body, and a conclusion, and all the whys that support it. Now, I know you probably hate that idea, but The concept here is that you're trying to prove something that you think is true. Now, again, start with the things that you know. Step 1. Whatever you want to start with is where you have to go. 6x plus 3 is equal to 9 times x minus 1. And the reason why you can say that is because somebody gave you a problem. So number 1 is definitely the given, okay? And you're going to see that in all the proofs that we work on. The given is going to be the first line. Number 2, well, you've got some choices here. What would you probably do next? And most people would probably say, well, the 9 needs to be pushed through, and I'd get 6x plus 3 is equal to 9x minus 9. What property up there allowed you to go from step 1 to step 2, and you tell me the why in the reasons? Well, that property that allowed me to do that was called the distributive property, okay? So you're really explaining what the process is all about. Now, ultimately, in algebra, we probably learned that you should move your x's to the same side. Now, I'm going to move 9x over there to the other side, and I'd put in line number 3 the result of that movement, which would be negative 3x plus 3 would equal negative 9. What property pushed it from there to there? Well, that would be I moved it by subtraction. That's the subtraction property of equality. Okay? So you explain each individual step. And you'd be like, oh, okay, well, next I'd subtract 3 on each side. And I would end up getting line number 4, which would be negative 3x is equal to negative 12. Again, that was the subtraction property. And then I would be like from step 4 to step 5, I would push this negative 3 on each side by division, and I'd get x is equal to 4. And I'd say, okay, the step that got me there was the division property of equality. So any one of those properties up above is definitely a rule that allows you to get from one step to the next. And your goal is to try and find some way to come out with this proved statement, okay? Now, below happens to be another proof that is for your try. Now, you're going to try by starting at least by writing the given out, which is the original problem itself, and then do the algebra and try to explain it. Now, I'm going to pause the video at this point in time, and I'm going to pause the video right now and allow you to try this proof on your own. Now, I'm going to leave some dead space here for a second so that it gives you a chance to get started, and for the substitute to actually push pause. Now, I did the actual proof this way just to show what the algebra was taking place, because the algebra is the part that you're very familiar with. But what I really want you to start focusing on is your whys. Why did you do such a thing? What took you from step 1 to step 2 in this particular case? Well, I subtracted 8x on each side, so it would make sense that this should be the subtraction property. Okay, and I don't mind if you abbreviate things, that's totally fine. Next, I went and I subtracted 7 on each side until I got this result, and that would be the subtraction property. Again, quotations just means that you got the same thing from up above. And then last but not least, to go from negative 2x minus 12 to the x equals 6, I did division property to get that particular deal. Okay? Now, what you really need to do on this is you got to practice, guys. You got to start with at least writing your given, then process yourself of what should come next and why did you do it. And when you get those whys, put those whys as reasons over here. They can be properties that you've come up with or seen, and those are allowed to explain why you're doing such things. So give the homework a try, and don't hesitate to try some proofs, because if you can do the algebra ones, I can guarantee you can do the segment ones coming up.